All right, so Andrew Wilson versus woke male feminists. Oh, I've been looking forward to this one. Let's get it.
I would not want to date someone who was not in the same life experience as me. And maybe that's because when I think of people, Andrew, who are virgins, I think of people who are much younger than me.
Why?
Because I don't. This is like feels like the same argument of people who are like,
what's wrong with dating someone much younger than you anyway?
I don't want to date people that have big penises. I don't want to date people that like the color pink. I don't want to date people that smell. These are preferences. There's nothing wrong with expressing your preferences. There's nothing wrong with having that attitude. And there's nothing wrong with Andrew Wilson saying, hey, look, he wants to date people that have big penises or that like the color blue or happen to be younger. That's perfectly fine. Why do people want to force their views onto other people like that? I mean, provided no one's hurting anyone here and it's consensual, this is the main thing. This is the hallmark of every good moral system. Consent, right? If someone wants to date you, they happen to be younger or they happen to be older or whatever the fuck it might be, and you're both consenting, what on earth is the problem? What is this nonsense people always like to express by saying that, look, you shouldn't be able to do something unless they like it, unless they don't find it weird? I've never understood that. I think it's absolute insanity. I find the conservatives do this by calling something sinful because they don't like it, by wanting to ban homosexuality or pornography. And I find it weird that leftists tend to do this by wanting to say that something is predatory or something is exploitation, even though parties have consented to it. This is the hallmark of authoritarianism. This is the hallmark of a control-based system, which I personally think is immoral and unethical, because unless you have a consent-based system of ethics, you can justify anything. And this is what tyrants do. They say, hey, you have to work on the slaves because, it's the right thing to do, and I think it's a good thing. If you don't work on the cotton fields, if you don't work as a slave, well, it's wrong, and I don't think you have the right to be free because it's dangerous if you running around in the woods and who knows what you're going to be getting up to. So I'm going to make sure that you work day and night, and someone wants to be free and you won't let them be free, so you have this tyranny. I mean, what's the difference between that and someone wanting to be in a relationship with someone that is older than or younger than them? I think it's complete insanity that people want to restrict people from doing something when they are both consenting to it. They are at an age where they can consent in terms that they are aware of what they're actually agreeing to. That's what consent means. You have the ability and the awareness to understand what you're agreeing to. And are we pretending that someone that is of the age of consent has that ability, is not going to be able to do that? This is a completely ridiculous argument.
Okay.
Honestly, what's wrong with dating? If you date an 18-year-old, what's the problem?
Date an 18-year-old?
Yeah.
At a different stage of life.
So?
What do you mean?
Why do you have to be at the same stage of life to date someone? That's stupid.
Because I think you should want to date someone who's on your level.
Yeah, but there we go again. I think you should want to go fuck yourself. I mean, seriously, what is this? It's like, I think you should... what's funny is I had this conversation with someone just a while ago, right? I was on this date with a leftist. Horrible idea, right? And they were telling me, and this is a completely different topic, but the same thread is here. They were telling me that I had to not find something disgusting. I was telling them I completely support homosexuality and people having whatever relationships they want to, but I personally think it's disgusting when guys have sex with each other, because I'm just not into that. I find it disgusting when people that I don't find attractive have sex, because it's just my sexual inclination. I just find it gross. It doesn't mean that I believe that they shouldn't be able to do it, right? And that's just normal. I find a lot of things disgusting. I find things that I love to do things that are disgusting. Like I made the point that I love cats. I think they're absolutely adorable, but they do things that disgust me. It doesn't mean that I have an issue with them doing those things, like how they cough out fur balls and stuff like that. That's disgusting. It grosses me out. She was trying to make the argument to me that I shouldn't find that disgusting, and that she can't be with someone that finds that kind of thing disgusting, or having, specifically, guys having sex disgusting. And I'm like, that's just, I mean, here's the thing. That's your choice, right? The problem I have is that some people want to try to enforce this with law. Some people try to say, hey, look, you shouldn't be able to find something disgusting. And she was actually making this argument. It's a form of microaggression, all right? And granted, in fairness, she didn't go as far as saying it should be made illegal, but she did make the point that it was somehow a wrong thing to do. And this is the kind of vein that people focus on, this idea that just because they find something repulsive, that you shouldn't be able to do it. This guy's making the argument, this woke leftist, that, well, I think it's weird that you date younger people. Well, I think it's weird, bro, that you go around trying to perpetuate this worldview of feminism and so forth, but I think you have the right to do it, provided you're not inciting violence, provided you are not inciting the restricting of people's unalienable individual rights, which is the whole basis of natural law, a just system in the Western world, or I would say universally. I don't have a problem with you doing that. But for some reason, you seem to have a problem, and this is what I think he's implying, with people doing things that are consensual. I mean, is this the world that we live in? Clearly it is. But I just think it's a ridiculous argument that has not really been well thought out.
People fall in love, have massively dissimilar interests, different IQs, different everything, and absolutely love each other.
Mm-hmm.
What's the fucking problem with that?
I don't think there's a problem with it when you get a lot older, but I do think like men of your age dating women who are like in their late teens, even if it's legal, is weird.
Why is it? Well,
okay, fair enough. You think it's weird. Why is it different though? This is the real question that I find people can't answer. Why is it so different when someone becomes a lot older? Let's say I'm a 2,000-year-old vampire. I've had all this ridiculous experience, and I want to date someone that is 100 years of age or 18. Why does it matter if they're consenting to it? Why does that matter? Does somehow me having all this experience, all of these powers now as a vampire, make it so that I can't be with someone that's younger? Is it more of a risk to them? I mean, if that's your argument, you're going to make the appeal to potentiality, the fact that it's dangerous for them, well, we can go anywhere with that. We can say that you shouldn't be able to go out on the street because you have weapons, and those weapons, those arms of yours could be used to hurt people. So therefore, you shouldn't be allowed on the streets. I mean, this kind of logic, when you take it to its logical conclusion, is complete logical insanity. And most people, I find, don't have the ability to actually think in terms of consistency and non-contradictory stances. And I find it so delusional that people do this.
Weird. That's quite the argument. It's weird.
Hold on.
Weird.
Are you arguing that there is nothing problematic whatsoever at all with, how old are you, like 50?
Well, no, I'm younger than you, probably. How old are you?
I'm 21. 22, sorry.
Oh, okay. That accounts for the stupidity. No, I'm 41.
41.
That was beautiful. I thought that was very warranted because obviously woke male feminist here was taking a stab at Andrew Wilson by implying he's 50 years old. And look, I mean, I suppose you could say that was in faith. I incline not to think so. I mean, he doesn't really look 50. Could be, but it doesn't really look 50. But I think that was a stab at him. And rightfully so, Andrew's obviously taking a stab at him. Well, you're obviously an idiot. That's why you're making the arguments that you're making. But besides the point, I think it's irrelevant. I mean, what does age have to do? I think it's just as pointless, honestly, if we're being consistent over here, to ask someone what race they are or whether they are male or female when they are giving an opinion on something. Are you implying that just because you don't fit into this demographic, it's an identity politics kind of argument, that because you don't categorize as a man or a woman or as someone within this age group, that your opinion is less valid? Is this the implication? Which I think is ridiculous. I mean, granted, you can make somewhat of a fair assessment on someone's ability based on their age. It's not inherently the case. I've spoken to people of all different ages. I've found some of the most brilliant people are actually much younger than the vast majority of older people I speak to. And granted, look, of course there is a theme here. We do find people that have had more experiences tend to be wiser. I think it's a false assumption that just because someone's older or someone is male or someone is of a particular race that they're supposed to have certain views or a certain awareness. And I think if you come into an argument with those kind of prejudices, it becomes somewhat of a misguided approach to understanding someone's argument, or just making that assumption can be problematic in of itself. I'm not saying you shouldn't be able to, but I just think as soon as you start prescribing someone's ability to make informed decisions about the world based on things like that is somewhat unwise and stupid.
Do you think nothing wrong with you if you wanted to go by UC Santa Barbara right now and,
What would be wrong with me dating an 18-year-old woman who wanted to date me? Why would that be problematic?
Strange.
Why? What's strange about it?
Because you are in different life experiences than she is. She is vastly...
Do you think 41-year-old women are going to be... Like, let's say I wanted children. Don't you think I should date younger if I wanted to have a lot of children?
Date an 18-year-old to have children?
Well, you're going to be able...
And here's the thing. Okay, so this woke feminist is making the argument, and I actually respect him here because he hasn't said that it's immoral. He hasn't said so far that I'm aware that it should be banned, made illegal. He's just saying he thinks it's strange and is entitled to that opinion. But if we're defining strange based on whether this is the norm, as in whether the most amount of people do this, so what we're considering normal here is the general public actually behaving like this, statistically, and what's very interesting is there's actually a lot of data in regards to this. OkCupid, this dating site, actually was able to collect all of this data based off of all of the preferences of the people that were on it, what their inclination was when it comes to going for people of certain demographics, people of certain age groups and whatnot. And what's interesting, what is so revealing is that when it comes to women, most women up to the ages of 30, 35, 40, 35 typically, would actually date men that were a couple of years older than them. And what we find is as they got much older, like in their 40s plus, they would actually try to date men that were a little younger. And we saw this correlation statistically. What was interesting is that with the men, see if you can guess what I'm going to say over here. With the men, what they found is that across all demographics of men picked the age group of 20, regardless of whether they were 20, regardless of whether they were 25, 30, 40, 50, 60, and so on. 20 was the average, was the mean as to the demographic age group that most men would pick. And you know what's even more interesting? The lowest option was 20. And this is interesting to me, right? Because there is this thing, right? And I think it's typically perpetuated by women that it is weird. And the thing is, it's true to an extent that I think a lot of women would probably find it weird. But most men, generally speaking, go after younger women. And I would make the argument, the only reason that you typically see in public, general public, men often saying that they don't is because they don't want the stigma of this inappropriate PDF vibes, right, of actually dating younger women. But the norm, and I will say it, I think it's obvious, culturally, historically, the norm has always been for men to want to date younger women because they're more fertile, they're more attractive. I mean, if you put all of that aside, even if you put all of that aside and just the natural inclination, younger women are typically more attractive. I mean, it's very different if you're looking for things in terms of compatibility, if you're interested in combined shared goals, shared values, and all that kind of stuff. I mean, there could be a whole bunch of reasons as to why you might want to date someone that's older. But typically speaking, if we're basing this on pure physical attraction, the norm is for men to want to date younger women, 18 and younger. I mean, that's just statistically the fact over here. And it's actually expressed across the board around the world in terms of the age of consent laws. I mean, most people always make this argument that the age of consent laws are obviously at 18, but if you actually have a look around the world, they don't actually represent that. They represent a much younger age of consent. And yeah, you can say that's disgusting, that's weird, but the thing is, historically, legally, it's actually not. But we still project this idea, at least some people project the idea that it's weird. Now, granted, I would make the argument, if you're defining weird as in something that's obnoxious, ridiculous, I don't care if the vast majority of people do this, it's still weird, that's a different argument. But if we're defining weird based on what we typically see being done, for instance, I personally think it's weird that people get married. The vast majority of people in the world get married, right? So, I mean, technically speaking, that is not weird in terms of what the majority of people are doing. But I think purely just on a commonsensical level, that's weird. But I just wanted to make the argument here that it's really not weird in the conventional sense, as in it's not uncommon for most people to actually do this. However, I think so many people are so out of touch with reality that they think this is weird in terms of what is conventionally done.
Able to give me the most amount of children, right?
Okay.
Can you tell me what's wrong with that, Oliver?
Yes.
What?
Because you were taking advantage of someone.
Oh, taking advantage.
Yes.
So let me get this right.
No,
I love this argument. This is my favorite woke argument, all right? So here's the thing. I am in a consenting relationship with someone. I give them a lot of money, and they give me their time and attention, and they spend all their youthful years with me, and they want this more than anything. I'm taking advantage of them because within your subjective perspective, it's not a fair equation. Everyone has a different sense of what is fair, what is acceptable. The one defining quality as to whether or not it is right is whether it's consenting. I mean, and people find this so difficult to do because they always want to project their idea of what they think is appropriate onto other people. And here's the thing, we're all different. I respect the fact that some people want to get married. If I said it was a form of exploitation for people to get married, right? I simply said, I don't like it. I feel like this is a weird power imbalance. You guys don't know what's in your best interest, therefore you shouldn't be allowed to get married. Obviously, I would be a douchebag here. Or and you can go so far with this. You can go as far as saying you shouldn't be allowed to be friends with someone because they're weird. But that would be outrageous. But so many people find it comfortable making arguments like this. I think it's ridiculous. I think it comes from this authoritarian nature for people to want to control other people because they don't like people living their own lives. And I find that very concerning. I find that immoral. And I find both the conservatives and both the leftists like to do this kind of stuff. How about just letting people live their own lives and not getting involved, provided they are not directly harming anyone? And most importantly, it is consensual.
Yes.
What?
Because you were taking advantage of someone.
Oh, taking advantage.
Yes.
So let me get this right.
No, to someone who's much
You
younger
agree
than
that
you?
I have tons more resources than the average 18-year-old woman?
Correct.
Huge amounts more resources.
Correct. The power differential.
And if it is
very
the case
different.
that woman gets all the beneficiary of all of those resources, right? Plus the added benefit that if she stayed with me, let's say for like 25 years, it is true that I could die much earlier than her and she would be set with massive amount of resources and our children would have way more resources than the average 18-year-old couple's children.
I think it's weird that it's a 41-year-old.
Can you answer my fucking question, Oliver?
Exactly. Oliver was really caught out there because there are two ways to argue this. I don't even take on the Andrew Wilson approach of making the argument that they're obviously standing to gain a lot more from being in this relationship. I mean, in terms of the whole power dynamic thing, I mean, you can make the argument that they're actually standing to benefit a lot more. Now, granted, there is a power dynamic on this one area, in this one variable in terms of resources, potentially. I mean, it's not always the case. A young woman could have more resources than an older man. But the thing is, we're just looking at one metric here. Why is power only measured by wealth? I mean, that's a very myopic perspective. It could be that woman has a lot more influence. She's younger, more attractive, therefore that has a lot of pull. The kind of pull that a 19-year-old beautiful woman has is immense. I mean, the idea that a man, I don't care if you're some kind of high-valued man. People that make this kind of argument, I'm a high-valued man, I got lots of money, that kind of shit. Look, here's the thing. If a woman walked out, an attractive, young, beautiful woman walked out on the streets of LA or pretty much anywhere around the world, and she wanted to wield that power to get an influential man, she is extremely capable of doing that. That is the kind of influence that is so hard to buy. We live in a society that really values youth and attractiveness, and that, I would argue, is far more powerful than a man that has millions of dollars in the bank and he is in his 50s and so forth. I mean, granted, there might be a rare amount of men in that situation, but the reality is that the kind of pull a young woman has is far more influential. But here's the thing, it's subjective, and there's so many other variables that you can apply to, such as charisma, such as, how about that youthful exuberance, or anything. It's not a simple case of you're older or you're younger, therefore you have more influence. Therefore, we're going to assume that, well, you have to be more powerful. And I think it's a very dubious argument to say that purely because someone is younger or older, they have more power. And this is the problem I have with so many of these kind of arguments. They're so assumptive. They make these false claims that, yeah, could be the general tendency. But then again, that's only the case if you're looking at it on this one metric. This idea of you're exploiting someone, you are taking advantage of them, it's such a weak argument.
Oliver, answer to my argument. Isn't it the case that if I'm 41, I have more resources she benefits from?
Sure.
Isn't it the case that if I'm 41, she's 18, the chances that our children are going to have more resources than if she had children with another 18-year-old, our children are likely going to have way more resources, right, Oliver?
I think having a differential like that is going to introduce a lot of
Can
other
you answer the fucking
problems.
question, Oliver?
I don't know, Andrew.
You don't know?
No.
You don't know if the average 41-year-old has children with 18-year-old, that 18-year-old's going to have more resources for their children than with the average 18-year-old, Oliver?
I think she's going to be traumatized as fuck.
Can you answer the fucking question, Oliver?
We're going with that argument. They're going to be traumatized from it. Oh, really? And what's the evidence for this as well? People just like to throw their made-up data to support things that they just don't like. And I find, once again, both the conservatives and the leftists do this kind of stuff. When they can't make the argument that something is inherently wrong, they appeal to, well, trauma, potential consequences of what's going to happen in the future. They said, well, conservatives often make the argument you shouldn't be able to take drugs like marijuana because that's going to lead to a whole bunch of problems, when there's also a lot of science to show that it actually alleviates people from a whole bunch of problems in the world, that it actually increases your semantic priming, which is associated with creativity and so forth. And it's just such a weak argument when people start appealing to potential consequences of doing something that is consensual or something that is within their right to do. They always appeal to the potential problematic issues that could arise, and it's such a weak argument if you're being logically consistent.
I'm not interested in your emotional state.
You're also not interested in the emotional state of 18-year-olds if you want to date them. That's
answer the question. What if they're emotional?
That's such a weak argument. It's like me saying you're obviously not interested in the health of people if you want to give them magic potions, right? Well, I mean, I personally do feel that way, if you know what I'm talking about, right? But I believe people have the right to take magic potions, whatever the hell they might be, whether they are they're granted by the government or whether they are granted by some hippie dealer that is into witchcraft or whatever it might be. But if I'm going to start saying that you don't have a right to take these things, and then you're traumatizing these people, you don't care about their health if you're giving them these things, it takes away from the real issue here, which is consent. You're making the claim that you think you know better for what is in the interests of these people than they do, and it's not only arrogant, but more importantly, it's not right if you're going to restrict them from doing that thing.
Emotional states, they love it.
No.
No?
Mm-mm. You should not date someone that young.
Are you going to answer my question?
So there it is. You should not date someone that young. Well, I would make the argument you should not be going out and spreading all of this nonsense. In fact, I would actually have, in my humble opinion, I would have a more grounded argument based on actual justice to make that argument. The latter argument, you should not be going out trying to essentially restrict people from their right to do things that they have the right to do, than for someone to make the argument that you should not be allowed to have a consenting relationship with someone because, well, I don't like it and I think it's weird and it might be traumatizing for them.
Would the average 18-year-old woman who had children with a man who was 41, would those children have more or less resources, probably on average?
Do you think the resources...
Answer the fucking question.
Sure, in terms of pure monetary thing. But that tells
Good
us
Lord.
Nothing, Andrew.
Why does
that
this
tells
woman...
us nothing.
So this woman can vote?
Sure.
But she can't choose her partner?
Can and should are different things.
Should 18-year-olds vote?
Yes, Andrew.
But they shouldn't be able to choose their partners?
They can choose their partners. Just because someone makes a choice and can make a choice doesn't mean that you should make that choice.
So for a society, so let me get this right. For a societal prescription, do you think that 18-year-olds should be able to nullify a 41-year-old's vote?
Yes.
Okay, wait a second. That's really weird. Why should an 18-year-old who you claim is at a different stage of life and doesn't know as much as a 41-year-old and can't compete with that 41-year-old's power dynamics because they're so much more intelligent, should be able to nullify his vote? Why?
What? I'm so curious to hear this guy's justification. Like, so you think an 18-year-old should be able to nullify a 41-year-old's vote? Like, what basis? I mean, are these people so completely insane with their sense of justice that they don't actually believe in equality in the truest sense of the word? And I think this is the problem with this kind of rationale. It's this idea that, well, we don't actually believe in true justice. We believe in this idea that we're going to allow someone's minority status, so whether or not we perceive them to be weaker, to override other people's rights. So if we consider you to be weaker, lesser than the other person, then we're going to allow you to have more influence. And I think it's it's not only very dangerous and immoral to think like that, but it assumes that someone is in a less off situation. It's the kind of attitude that allows you to be racist in a very disgusting way. It's like this low expectation of you purely based on your age or your race. Like, oh, you're 18, therefore you're not wise enough. And I know when I was that age, and on a lot of topics, because this is the kind of stuff I was into, I was much more well versed in philosophy, and I would say history, than the vast majority of people twice my age when I was 19, 20. And the idea of someone saying purely because of my age, I shouldn't be able to have a viewpoint on the world that rivals someone that is twice my age is a very assumptive and flawed argumentation.
Should they be able to nullify that person's vote, Oliver?
Everyone should have a vote, and I'm not going to argue about you with women
Answer
having
the
the right to
fucking
vote.
question.
I will answer it, and I'm telling you, I'm not going any further on this.
Yeah, I'm going further on
Okay,
this.
well then I'm not going.
I'm not giving you a choice, Oliver. You don't get to run, Oliver.
No, I'm not.
I don't care what you want, Oliver. It's a debate, Oliver.
I'm not going to justify why women have the right
I
to vote.
don't give a fuck. I
Okay,
want to know,
fine.
Oliver, why should they be able to nullify the vote of a man?
Because it's not nullifying. They are both.
If they vote against me, you nullify my vote.
They are okay, and everyone nullifies other people's votes all the time.
No, they don't.
What you are?
No, they don't.
What you are voting? Yes, if I vote
No,
against
they
you,
don't.
I nullify
If
your
40
vote.
million people vote for Trump with me, are they nullifying my vote?
Oh my God, there are always people who will nullify your vote.
That's
That
not
doesn't
everybody
mean-
nullifies everyone's vote, Oliver.
Okay, I'm sorry that you took that statement.
So
as literally
40
as-
million-
Okay, perhaps this was a misunderstanding in my interpretation of what he meant there. So he's talking about nullification from the perspective of, like, if you vote for something and then I vote for something in an opposite direction, we nullify. Though this guy was making the argument that somehow because you're a minority, your vote is worth more than someone else's vote, which I still incline to think he might actually be arguing. But let's give this guy the benefit of the doubt.
If 40 million people vote with me, are they nullifying my vote or enhancing my political
Andrew,
power?
Yeah, okay, sure. Okay, congrats, you won the language game.
Okay,
I'm talking
so now
about,
back to this.
Okay,
Yeah.
everyone is governed under the system of laws, and everyone is affected by our system of governance. Thus, everyone should be represented politically in our government and have their voice heard.
They would still be represented the same way a 16-year-old is.
Wait,
What do you mean?
Articulate an actual
Adults.
argument.
And this is the thing, like when it comes to voting and all this kind of stuff, I think it's completely irrelevant. Ultimately, here's the thing. You can vote for whatever you want, but your vote shouldn't nullify my natural rights. I mean, we can vote on things outside of that, but if we want to allow someone's vote to nullify my ability to have a consensual relationship with someone, I don't care whether or not you are 20 years old or you're 1,000 years old or you are pink or blue or whatever the fuck that might be. You don't get to fucking nullify my natural rights. And the problem I have with so many of these people is they seem to have this idea that everything is up in the air. This is the progressive worldview, that we don't actually have any actual idea of natural rights. Everything is in flux. Therefore, I can somehow subjugate your will, your consent, because it's in the greater interest of the collective, or it's to prevent you from being exploited and so forth. And ultimately, my whole thing is, hey, you do what you want, I do what I want, and let's try to work together. Let's try to come together as a country and focus on things outside of our basic, natural, unalienable rights. But as soon as we start getting this territory where we're going to allow our virtues, our ideas of what are good and bad, outside of actual harm and so forth, like saying, hey man, I don't think it's good for you to have a big dick, or to talk to people that are interested in things that I don't like, or hey, to have a consenting relationship with someone that is too old or too young for you, we got a problem. Anyway, let us know what you think in the comments below. Signing out, this is your boy, the chocolate Nubian soul brother from Ghana, West Africa, aka the esoteric noetic, aka Krishool. Peace!
I don't even care where this phone leads.